The future of law enforcement arrives at Rockford Police Department in the form of GPS technology, allowing them to avoid a dangerous high-speed pursuit. WIFR News reporter Sydney Stoffregan watched a demonstration of the new tool with the officers who will use it.
They're dangerous for our officers, they're dangerous for those that we're chasing, and they're really dangerous for innocent bystanders.
Nearly every day, someone is killed as a result of a high-speed police chase in the U.S. The Rockford Police Department hopes to change that by using Star Chase's GPS tracking and tagging technology.
It affords us the ability to track those vehicles that may be stolen or fleeing from the police safely. We won't have to engage in high-speed chases.
8 mounted devices and 8 handheld guns will be used by officers. They were purchased with a $126,000 grant secured by Senator Steve Stottleman.
It allowed me to use a handheld, and I hit the target, but I got to preface it that I was standing on the ground. I wasn't in the vehicle going 55 miles an hour behind another car.
The GPS launcher fires a sticky dart at a vehicle in motion. It lets officers keep their distance. Oakbrook Sergeant Jason Wood uses Star Chase daily. He explains once the driver flees the scene, that tracker won't budge.
Studies have shown within about 2 minutes of a fleeing felon not seeing police lights, they return to normal driving. That allows us to follow that map, follow that car.
Officers have 8 hours to catch the perpetrator before the signal is lost. Wood says 80 to 90% of the time, officers are able to recover the vehicle and the people inside.
So it's been very successful for us. It's reduced a lot of crashes, injuries, and it's mitigated a lot of litigation.
In Rockford, Sydney Stoffregan, WIFR News.
RPD hopes to have the Star Chase devices installed early next year.